Welcome back. Now we've already seen how to put button onto your application. We've also seen how to make button do something. So it was like putting a label onto your application. But every time, for example, let's just run this. So every time you hit your button, same stuff is being done, right? So probably you would want this button to do dynamic things. So dynamic things in the sense, every time button is pressed, so it will just keep a count how many times button has been pressed. How would we want to do that? There are a couple of ways to do it, and obviously when you're dealing with classes and objects, you must know as many number of possible ways as possible. So the first thing is, what you can do is you can basically make a variable, and then probably in the do something function you can just increment that variable by 1, and then inside your string you can, using your formatting, you can put that variable there so that every time it just changes value. I'll show you how. So maybe we can do count is equal to 0. So the basic count is 0. So the first time it's gonna be, first time you press your button, then you're gonna say count is equal to count plus 1. And now you've done that, but count, when you mention count here, it's outside this. This is local variable count defined. Just always look for the whatever information it's trying to provide you. So what you can do is, we want this count variable to be global count variable, which we have defined outside. So I'll just need to say global count. So now whenever I'm referring to count, that count is this global variable which is outside the class. Okay, so you'll just grab that by saying global count, and then you increment that, and then pressed inside this, what you can do is like so, and then a dot format, and then you can just put count in here. Okay, and after that you can say times. So it will say button has been pressed 1 time, 2 times, or 1 times, or 2 times, or 3 times. So that's not the point. I'm just telling you how we can get this to work. Now in case if we run this, let's make it bigger. So button has been pressed 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. So we continue all day. If you have all day, you can do that, but that's not very exciting, is it? So eventually we'll be gradually we'll be learning how to do more exciting stuff. But this was one way of doing it. What's the other way of doing this? Other way of doing this is, it's not good practice to keep making global variables, so we'll just take this out. Okay, but one thing is for sure, that we would want a variable, obviously, then we can increase the count. So what I can do is, I can make a class variable. So rather than defining it outside the class, I'm just defining it inside the class, but it's not inside the, be very careful that it's not inside the init function, or it's not inside any other function of the class. Okay, so I'm gonna say count is equal to 0. Now if I want to have access to this count, I can't just do like this, so this count is inside this function, do something function, this count. But what we want is, we want this class variable count. So I'll have to name class dot count. So basic dot count is equal to basic dot count, and then wherever we had count, we'll just say basic dot count. Okay, so now you are referring to the class variable. So class variable is defined outside the init function, and then whenever you have to have access to the class variable, so this is how you can do. And in case we want to run it now, So you will see that same stuff you can do using the class variable instead of global variable. Yeah, now one thing might pop into your head is that, can we do that with the help of instance variable? Okay, let's try this. Instance variable is which is defined using the self. Okay, so you remember we are using class here, we are not using the self. So let's just say self dot count is equal to 0. Okay, and instead of basic dot count, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say self dot count is equal to self dot count plus 1. And over here as well, instead of basic, I'm just gonna write self. Let's try and do this. Okay, so let me run it here. So you see, you can do this using global variables, you can do this using class variables, you can do this using instance variables, but methods are different, but you are eventually doing the same stuff. So you just need to understand the scopes of different things which you are using. For example, if you're using global variable, that's going to be, you can use it anywhere inside the class, probably in the init function or inside your methods as well. So methods are nothing but functions when they are inside the class, they are called methods. So, but when you're creating a variable inside your method or a function, that variable just has scope as long as that function is being called. And obviously then you can have instance variables. So instance variables, they have scope all over the runtime as long as you're using the class and methods. So all the methods will have access to the instance variables. And in case if you're using class variables, then all the methods can have access to the class variables as well, provided you are using the class name in front of it rather than self. In case if it is getting a bit too much at this point, don't worry, practice makes you perfect. So more you put in practice and more questions you have in your head, I can assure you better you're gonna be understanding all this stuff. Yeah, so I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.